Lena stepped off the long train ride with stiff legs, tired eyes, and a heart full of hope. She had spent the last 3 days watching endless fields pass by her window, golden grasslands, small lonely towns, and empty open plains. She believed that at the end of this long journey, a new life was waiting for her. A life where she wouldn't be alone anymore. A life where she could finally belong. She walked onto the wooden platform, holding 2 old suitcases that carried everything she owned. Her dress was simple, stitched carefully by her own hands. Her hair was tied back neatly, though the long travel had loosened it a bit. She looked around the station with a nervous smile, expecting to see a man holding a sign with her name, or waving at her, or maybe even walking toward her with a friendly smile. She imagined him tall, honest, and gentle, just like the letters he had written to her. But the station was quiet. Only a few passengers stepped off with her, and most of them quickly met family or friends. Lena stood still, watching everyone else find someone. No one came toward her. No one called her name. No one looked like they were searching for a bride. Still, she waited patiently. Thomas Hale had written that he would meet her at the station. He had sounded certain, respectful, and eager in his letters. He had told her that he lived on a small ranch and needed a partner in life. Someone he could trust. Someone who could bring warmth back into the empty rooms of his home. Lena had felt touched by his words, and she had said yes after many weeks of thinking. She believed he would come. He had to. An hour passed. Then another. The sun moved higher in the sky, and the warm afternoon slowly became windy and cool. Lena tried to stay calm. She sat on a wooden crate near the wall of the depot building. Her suitcases rested beside her. Her fingers twisted together nervously. A few men walked by and stared, whispering among themselves. A couple of women gave her curious looks, trying to guess her story. Lena kept her head down. She felt embarrassment creeping in, though she didn't want to admit it. Maybe he was late. Maybe something happened on the ranch. Maybe he was coming but was delayed. She looked again toward the dirt road leading into town. No wagon, no horseman, no sign of the cowboy she had agreed to marry. The wind picked up, sweeping dust across the platform. Lena pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She didn't have much money left. Most of it had been spent on the train ticket. She had enough for maybe 2 cheap meals or 1 night in the small boarding house across the street. After that, she had nothing. She had left her old life behind because she believed this new beginning would be different. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Miss, are you waiting for someone?" Lena looked up. It was the telegraph operator, an older man with kind eyes. He stood near the doorway, looking at her suitcases and her anxious face. "Yes," she said softly. "He was supposed to meet me." "What's his name?" the man asked. "Thomas Hale." The operator shook his head slowly. "No one by that name has come through today." Lena forced a small smile, though inside her heart tightened. "Maybe he's on his way." "Could be," the man agreed gently. "You're welcome to wait inside. It'll get colder soon." "Thank you," she replied, but she remained on the crate. She wanted Thomas to see her right away when he arrived. More hours passed. The sun lowered. Shadows stretched across the platform. Lena's hope began to tremble. She wasn't a dramatic person, but she couldn't stop imagining things going wrong. What if he changed his mind? What if he saw her picture and decided she wasn't good enough? What if he was only joking in his letters? What if she had been foolish to trust a man she had never met? Her mind filled with painful memories, years of being overlooked, years of trying her best but never feeling wanted. She had no family who would miss her. No close friends who would write to her. She had taken this chance because she believed someone finally believed in her. But now she was alone on a wooden crate, feeling the cold creep into her bones. The station master eventually approached her and placed a worn blanket around her shoulders. "Just until you warm up," he said kindly. Lena thanked him with a trembling voice. She didn't want pity, but she felt grateful for the small act of kindness. Night arrived slowly. The last train left. The sky turned dark. The lanterns inside the small station flickered. Still, no one came for her. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, trying not to cry. She told herself she was strong, that she had survived many lonely nights before. She could find work in this town, maybe as a housemaid, or in the small bakery she had seen. She could sleep in the boarding house tonight, and tomorrow she would begin again. But her heart still whispered a desperate question. Why didn't he come? While Lena sat shivering on the crate. Miles away, Thomas Hale was preparing his horse for a long ride. He didn't know she had already arrived. He didn't know she was alone and frightened. He didn't know she believed he had abandoned her. A storm earlier in the week had damaged the bridge that carried mail to his ranch. Her final letter with the arrival date never reached him. He believed she was coming the next evening. As he tightened the saddle straps, a young rider rushed into his yard, shouting his name. Thomas hurried over, and the rider breathlessly explained that the train schedule had changed. "Your bride arrived today," the rider said. "She's at the main station waiting." Thomas felt his stomach drop. Fear shot through him. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat, mounted his horse, and rode into the night. He pushed his horse hard, cutting through the dark hills and rough woods, desperate to reach the station before anything bad happened. But Lena didn't know any of this. She only saw the empty road, the quiet station, and the long, lonely night. Near midnight, she forced herself to stand up and stretch. She lifted one suitcase, then the other, thinking maybe she should try the boarding house after all. As she walked toward the door, her legs shook from exhaustion and cold. The telegraph operator opened the door for her and said softly, "You can stay inside if you need to." Lena nodded, stepping in. The small station office was warm. A single lantern glowed on the desk. She took a seat on a wooden bench, her suitcases beside her. The blanket stayed around her shoulders. She looked through the window at the silent platform, her hope nearly gone. But even in her fear, she still whispered to herself, "Maybe he will come. Maybe tomorrow." She leaned back against the wall, her eyes heavy from the long day, her heart tired from worry. She didn't know if she should feel angry, sad, or foolish. She only felt empty. Outside, the wind howled across the open plains. Small grains of dust swirled across the tracks. The lantern inside flickered. Lena closed her eyes softly, her thoughts drifting between fear and hope. She remembered Thomas's letters, his gentle words, his talk of a peaceful ranch where she would be welcomed. She remembered how he said he admired her bravery for choosing a new life. She remembered how she had smiled when he wrote that he wanted a future filled with trust and partnership. Those letters had sounded so warm and sincere. After a while, she pulled the blanket tighter around herself and whispered in a tired voice, "Maybe something happened. Maybe he didn't mean to." She didn't know that Thomas was still riding through the night, pushing his horse across rough land, his heart full of guilt and worry. He kept imagining her alone at the station, waiting, maybe afraid, maybe thinking he didn't want her. The thought hurt him deeply. He didn't know her face yet, but he already cared about her feelings because she was supposed to be his partner, someone he hoped to share his life with. The night felt endless to both of them, Lena sitting quietly in the small station room, Thomas riding through darkness as fast as he could. As dawn slowly approached, the sky began turning pale gray. The first birds chirped softly. Lena opened her eyes again, realizing she had fallen asleep for a short while. She stood up and stepped outside. The morning air was cold, brushing against her cheeks. The road was empty. Her heart ached, but she took a deep breath and steadied herself. She told herself she had survived worse. She told herself she would not break. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I will wait one more hour. Just one more." She sat back on the crate, holding the blanket close. She had no idea that, far down the road, A tired cowboy on a worn-out horse was finally coming, riding with all the strength he had left, hoping she was still there. But for now, Lena waited alone, believing her new life had already fallen apart before it even began. Thomas Hale rode through the cold night with a worried heart. He had never been a man who panicked easily. Life on a ranch taught him to stay calm through storms, cattle trouble, and long winters. But tonight, fear pushed him harder than any storm ever had. He kept imagining a woman, his bride, standing alone at the station, with no idea why he wasn't there. Every time the image crossed his mind, he urged his horse to run faster. His coat billowed behind him. Dust rose from the ground beneath the horse's hooves. The moonlight came and went behind drifting clouds, and the wind cut against his face like cold needles. Even then, Thomas didn't slow down. The ranch had been his whole world for years, but a home meant little if someone was waiting for him and losing hope with every passing minute. He didn't know what she looked like. Her letters had been warm but simple. She had described her kindness, her ability to work hard, her wish for a partner in life. She had mentioned nothing grand about herself. But he already respected her. She had agreed to join him in a new land, far away from everything she knew. That alone made her brave in his eyes. And now he had left her waiting. As he rode, the ground shifted under the horse's feet, soft patches, rough stretches, and narrow paths. Thomas leaned forward, whispering encouragement to his horse. "Just a little farther, we'll make it." The horse was tired, but it trusted him. Together, they pushed on. Hours passed. The sky slowly changed from deep black to a soft, dark blue. Dawn was approaching. The faint light helped Thomas see the path better, and he sped up again. His heart thudded heavily in his chest. "Please, still be there," he whispered to himself. In the small railway station, Lena sat with her knees pulled close, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She hadn't slept much, just a few moments of drifting off when her body couldn't stay awake any longer. Her eyes stung with exhaustion, but she kept them open. Her hope, fragile as it was, kept her awake. When the operator stepped out with a cup of warm tea, he offered it to her kindly. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice small and tired. He looked at her with sympathy. "Sometimes folks run late. You never know." His words were gentle, though even he didn't fully believe them anymore. But he wanted to comfort her in any way he could. Lena sipped the tea slowly. The warmth helped her body, but her heart still felt heavy. She didn't want to cry. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry in front of strangers. But being alone in a new place after such a long journey made her feel more fragile than she expected. She looked down the road again. The sky was turning lighter, painted with pale pink and gray streaks. The town around the station was still quiet. The shops closed. The streets empty. A rooster crowed in the distance. Morning was coming, and with it, the moment she would have to decide what to do next. Maybe she could find work. She had skills sewing, cooking, helping with children. Maybe someone in the town would give her a chance. She had survived many difficult chapters of her life before. She could survive this too. But the idea of being unwanted again, of being forgotten or overlooked, made her chest tighten. "Just one more hour," she whispered to herself again, repeating the promise she'd made before dawn. Only one more. Back on the road, Thomas spotted the first outlines of the town. His heart jumped. He could see the faint smoke rising from the small chimney of the station office. He could see the old water tower beside the tracks, and most importantly, he could see the station platform. He pressed his heels gently into his horse's sides, urging him forward. Lena stood up and stretched her cold legs. The blanket slipped a little, and she pulled it back around herself. She picked up one suitcase, testing its weight. She didn't want the townspeople to see her fall apart. If the man wasn't coming, she would leave with dignity. She would find a path for herself. She slowly lifted the second suitcase. Just then, she heard a faint sound hooves. At first, she thought it was just her imagination. But the sound grew louder. The telegraph operator stepped out, shading his eyes from the morning light. "Someone's riding in fast," he murmured. Lena froze. The sound came closer, steady and strong. A horse galloped down the road, and a man hunched forward in the saddle, his coat whipping behind him. Dust followed in a long trail. He rode like someone desperate. Someone searching. Her heart began to beat faster, though she didn't dare believe it yet. The rider slowed as he reached the station gate. The horse breathed heavily, covered in sweat and dust. The man swung down, stumbling slightly from the long ride. He looked around quickly, frantic, searching, hopeful and afraid at the same time. When his eyes met hers, everything stopped. Lena felt her breath catch. The man stared at her, as if he had been searching for her through the whole night. His face was tired, his hair windswept, his clothes dusty, but his eyes looked honest and deeply sorry. He took a small step toward her. She didn't know whether to drop the suitcases or hold them tighter. She nodded, a mixture of relief and confusion washing over her. "Yes, I'm Lena." He exhaled a long breath, full of guilt and relief. "I'm Thomas Hale. I'm so sorry I wasn't here. His voice cracked slightly. "The letter didn't reach me. I didn't know the train schedule changed. I came as fast as I could." Lena didn't speak at first. Her emotions twisted inside her. Part of her wanted to be angry, to tell him how painful the wait had been. Another part wanted to cry with relief. But above all, she felt unsure. Could she trust this man? Thomas stepped closer, slow and gentle, as if afraid she might back away. "I'm sorry," he repeated, his voice soft. "You must have been scared. And cold. And thinking I wasn't coming." Lena swallowed hard. I didn't know what to think." He nodded, accepting her words without excuse. "You have every right to be upset. But I give you my word. I didn't leave you behind. I wanted to meet you properly. I wanted to welcome you. I only wish I could turn back the hours and be here when you stepped off that train." Something in his tone touched her heart. He sounded sincere, exhausted, worried. She looked at the horse behind him, breathing heavily, clearly ridden hard and fast all night. That alone told her something important. He had tried. The telegraph operator leaned in and whispered to her, "He looks like he rode straight through the night for you." Lena's eyes softened a little. Thomas reached out slightly, not to touch her, but to show he meant no harm. "May I take your bags? You shouldn't be lifting them alone after such a long journey." She hesitated, then slowly nodded. As he lifted the heavy suitcases, she noticed how gently he handled them, as if they were something precious. He didn't rush her. He didn't push her. He only showed care. "You must be tired," he said quietly. "Cold, too. There's a small cafe near the end of the street. Let me buy you something warm to eat. And a fresh cup of tea. You deserve better than spending the night here." Lena's eyes stung again, but this time from emotion, not cold. She nodded softly. "Thank you." They walked slowly together, Thomas carrying her bags and Lena holding the blanket around her shoulders. The townspeople who had seen her waiting earlier now watched them with quiet smiles or nods of relief. Some whispered again, but this time their expressions were warmer, less pity, more understanding. Inside the cafe, Thomas ordered hot porridge and bread for her, and strong coffee for himself. When the food arrived, Lena warmed her hands on the bowl before taking a bite. The simple meal felt like a feast after such a long night. Thomas watched her with gentle concern. "Did anyone here treat you poorly? Did anyone bother you?" he asked softly. "No," she said. "The people were kind. I was just scared." He lowered his head slightly. I should have been here. Lena studied him for a moment. His tired eyes, his dust-covered boots, the way his hands trembled slightly from cold and exhaustion. She realized he wasn't pretending. He truly regretted everything. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. Even if it was late. His eyes lifted to hers, and a small, thankful smile formed on his face. "I would have crossed the whole state if it meant finding you here." Those words settled quietly between them. Lena still felt cautious, but something warm had begun to grow in her heart, a small seed of trust. When they finished eating, Thomas paid the cafe keeper and helped her back outside. "If you're ready," he said gently, "we can start the journey to the ranch. It's a bit far, but the ride is peaceful once we leave the town behind." Lena took a breath and nodded. "I'm ready." But deep inside, she still wondered what kind of life was waiting for her at the ranch. She didn't know if she could truly belong there. She didn't know if she could trust completely yet. But she walked beside Thomas anyway, because something in his eyes told her she was no longer alone. The sun had risen fully by the time Thomas helped Lena toward the wagon waiting near the end of the street. The horse hitched to it, flicked its tail lazily, already awake and ready for the morning's journey. Thomas lifted her suitcases into the back, making sure they were secure, then turned to her with a gentle, almost shy smile. "You can sit up front," he said softly. "It's more comfortable, and you'll have a better view of the road." Lena stepped up carefully, still tired from her long night at the station. Thomas climbed onto the driver's seat beside her. For a moment, they sat in silence, both unsure how to begin their first true conversation. The town stretched behind them, quiet, small, and already fading into the dusty morning light. Ahead lay rolling plains, open sky, and a long dirt road leading toward the ranch. Thomas clicked his tongue softly, and the horse began moving. The wagon creaked, and the gentle sway of its wheels over the uneven path made Lena grip the edge for balance. Thomas noticed and adjusted his hold on the reins. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "I'll make sure the ride stays smooth." She nodded, grateful. A light breeze swept through her hair, and the cool morning air touched her cheeks. It felt different from the cold night. Softer, hopeful. For a few minutes, neither spoke. The land around them stretched wide golden fields far into the distance, scattered bushes, and the occasional group of trees standing tall like old guardians. A few birds flew overhead, calling loudly as if greeting the new day. Finally, Thomas cleared his throat gently. "I know. Yesterday must have been terrible for you." Lena didn't answer right away. She kept her eyes on the road ahead, thinking carefully. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but honest. "It was hard. I was afraid I had made a mistake." Thomas's hands tightened lightly on the reins. "I understand. If I had arrived and not found you, I would have feared that you changed your mind. I would have thought something happened on your way." Their words hung in the air quietly. A shared worry, different sides of the same fear. "I never meant to make you feel unwanted," Thomas added after a moment. "If you give me a chance, I'll show you that you were not forgotten. Not for a single moment." His voice held sincerity that touched her heart, though she didn't show it openly. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Thank you for coming, even if it was late." He gave a small smile, tired but warm. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you're never left waiting again." Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks at his gentle promise. She looked away toward the horizon, unsure how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her with such careful intention. As the wagon moved farther from town, the landscape opened even more. Rolling fields brushed with sunlight, distant hills, and stretches of tall grass that danced in the wind made the world look big and full of possibility. Lena breathed deeply, letting the fresh air steady her. After some time, she asked quietly, "How far is your ranch?" "About 2 hours," he replied. A bit longer if the road is muddy. But today seems clear. She nodded again and relaxed a little. The wagon's gentle rhythm, the sound of hooves, and the warm morning air created a calm she hadn't felt in days. Thomas glanced at her from the corner of his eye. She looked delicate in the soft light, tired yet strong. He admired the way she held herself straight-backed despite her exhaustion, quietly composed despite her fear. He had imagined his future bride many times, but seeing her in person made everything feel more real, more important. Lena, on the other hand, studied him discreetly. He had a quiet strength about him, the kind that didn't need loud words or bold gestures. His hands were rough from work, his shoulders steady, his expression calm even after riding all night. She wondered what kind of man he really was behind the letters he had sent. "You look tired," she finally said softly. He let out a small breath, almost a laugh. "I am, but I'll rest once we reach home. Right now, I'm glad I found you." Those simple words eased the tension inside her. She looked at him properly for the first time, noticing the lines near his eyes from years of sun and work, the dust on his boots, and the sincerity in his face. He didn't look like a man who would leave someone behind. The road climbed gently up a hill, giving them a view of the valley below. Cattle grazed peacefully in the distance. A few small ranch houses dotted the land far away like tiny specks. The world around them felt vast, open, and free. "Is it lonely out here?" Lena asked, after a moment of thought. Thomas considered her question. "It can be," he admitted. "The land is big. Sometimes weeks pass without seeing many people. But a home doesn't feel lonely when it has someone in it. Someone who brings life to it." 8. Lena slowly folded her hands in her lap. "Do you miss your wife?" she asked carefully. He didn't answer immediately. His face grew more thoughtful. "Yes," he said quietly. "She was a good woman. Kind and gentle. Losing her, it changed everything for a long time." He looked at Lena with soft honesty. But the loneliness wasn't only from losing her. It was from not having anyone to live for anymore. "That's why I wrote to you. Not because I wanted someone to replace her, but because I wanted to build a future again." Lena's heart softened at his words. She understood grief and loneliness all too well. His honesty made her feel less like a stranger. They continued riding. The morning sun warmed their faces. A few deer crossed the path in the distance, their heads turning curiously toward the wagon before disappearing into the tall grass. As the road smoothed out, Thomas spoke again. "I prepared a room for you. I wasn't sure what you'd like, but I tried to make it feel comfortable. I hope it's all right." Lena blinked, surprised. "You prepared a room?" He nodded. "Yes. I wanted you to feel welcome and safe." A small warmth filled her chest. She imagined him repairing things, cleaning the space, arranging a bed, trying to make a home ready for someone he had never met. "That's very kind," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know you're not coming to an empty house," he replied gently. "You're coming to a home. Your home." The words felt heavy in a good way, warm, promising, unexpected. A few minutes later, the path dipped down again. Ahead, she could see a faint line of smoke rising into the sky. Thomas pointed toward it with a small smile. "We're getting close." Lena leaned forward slightly, her curiosity growing. The wagon slowly crested another small hill, and there it was, his ranch. It wasn't grand or large. It was simple, but strong. A sturdy wooden house with a slanted roof, a small barn beside it, a fenced area for cattle, and a few trees that gave shade to the porch. The yard was neat. A rock border surrounded a small, freshly dug flower bed, though the plants were still young. The windows looked clean. The porch railings had been recently painted. Everything looked cared for. Thomas slowed the horse as they approached. "It's not much," he said quietly. But it's home. Lena's eyes softened. The house didn't feel intimidating. It felt peaceful, warm, like a place where life could begin again. He stopped the wagon, jumped down, and offered her his hand. For a moment, she hesitated, not because she didn't want to take it, but because she wasn't used to being gently helped. But then she placed her hand in his, and he guided her down carefully, making sure she was steady on her feet. When she stepped onto the ground, she felt a strange emotion, a mixture of nervousness and quiet excitement. This place would shape her future. Thomas lifted her suitcases once more and carried them inside. Lena followed slowly, looking around. The interior was simple and tidy. A stone fireplace stood near the front room. A few wooden chairs, a table, and shelves filled with books and tools decorated the space. Everything was arranged neatly. He led her to the room he had prepared. When he opened the door, she saw a small bed with a clean quilt, a wooden dresser, a handmade rug on the floor, and a vase of simple wildflowers on the table. "I didn't know what colors you liked," he admitted softly. "But I thought the room should look warm." Lena touched the quilt gently. "It's beautiful," she whispered. A soft silence fell between them, warm and comfortable. Thomas watched her with hopeful eyes. He didn't rush her. He didn't pressure her. He simply stood there, waiting to see if she felt safe. She turned toward him and gave him a small, tired smile. "Thank you for preparing this," she said. "It feels like someone cared." Thomas's expression softened, almost emotional. "I did care," he said quietly. "And I still do. I know today is only the beginning. We'll take things slow. You've been through a lot." Lena looked around the room again. She breathed slowly, letting the comfort of the space settle inside her. After everything she had feared, being abandoned, being rejected, being lost, she now stood inside a warm home built with gentle hands. And though she wasn't ready to say it aloud, a small part of her began to believe she might finally belong. The morning light drifted gently across Lena's new room as she woke up to her first full day on the ranch. For a moment, she lay still, unsure of where she was. Her mind reached back to the cold train station, the endless waiting, the fear that she had been left alone again. But then she opened her eyes and saw the soft quilt, the wooden dresser, and the vase of wildflowers Thomas had placed beside her bed. Slowly, the memory of the previous day returned: the long wagon ride, the quiet conversations, and the way Thomas had spoken with such care. She breathed deeply. The air smelled of fresh wood, clean morning breeze, and something warm baking in the kitchen. Her stomach growled softly, reminding her she hadn't eaten much since yesterday morning. She sat up, smoothed her dress, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But in a gentle way, like a chapter that hadn't been written yet. Outside her window, she could see Thomas already at work. He moved with a natural rhythm, checking the water troughs, feeding the horses, and walking the fence line. Even from a distance, she could tell he was tired from the long night before. But he still worked with quiet strength. Watching him, she felt a small spark of admiration. She changed into a clean dress, braided her hair neatly, and walked slowly to the kitchen. The wooden floor creaked softly beneath her feet. When she entered, she found a pot of oats warming on the stove and fresh bread wrapped in a cloth. Beside the table, a note waited. "I went out to check the fields. Eat something warm. If you need anything, call for me. Thomas." The handwriting was strong and careful. She touched the note gently, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. No one had left her a note of care in a very long time. She served herself some oats and bread. As she ate, she listened to the quiet sounds of the land, the birds singing, the distant lowing of cattle, the soft creak of the barn door as Thomas worked. After breakfast, she stepped outside. The sunlight felt warm on her face. The ranch stretched wide around her fields, rolling in soft waves, tall grass brushing in the wind, and the small house behind her glowing softly in the morning light. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. She felt shy, unsure where she belonged in such a quiet, hard-working place. Thomas noticed her the moment she stepped out. He wiped his hands on a cloth and walked toward her with a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded. "Yes. Better than I expected." "I'm glad," he replied, his voice warm. They stood together quietly for a moment, the morning air wrapping around them like a soft blanket. Finally, Thomas gestured toward the barn. "I'd like to show you around, if you're ready." "Only if you want to," he added, leaving room for her comfort. Lena nodded with a small smile. "I'd like that." They walked side by side, moving slowly so she could take everything in. He showed her the barn, its clean stalls, the tools neatly hanging on the walls, the sacks of grain stacked in order. The horses lifted their heads as she passed, some curious, some calm. She reached out and gently touched one horse's neck. Its warm breath puffed against her hand. "He likes you," Thomas said softly. Lena smiled, surprised. "He's gentle. He's one of my favorites, hard-working and loyal. He carried me through the night to find you." She looked at the horse with new appreciation. "Thank you," she whispered to the animal, as if he could understand. Maybe he did. Thomas showed her the chicken coop, the vegetable patch he hoped to expand, the water well, and the storage shed. Each part of the ranch held a quiet story, a piece of the life he lived alone for so long. And now, he was sharing it all with her, not with pressure, but with a careful openness. As they walked back toward the house, he slowed his steps. "I know this must feel overwhelming," he said gently. "New place, new life, a man you barely know." Lena looked down at her hands. "It is overwhelming, but not in a bad way. Just new." They stopped near the porch. Thomas rested his hands on the railing. "I want you to know something," he said quietly. "You're not expected to have everything figured out today, or tomorrow, or even next week. Take your time. Learn the land, the home, and me at your own pace." Lena felt her heart soften again. "Thank you," she whispered. "It helps to hear that." He nodded, understanding her unspoken worries. "We'll build things together, slowly, kindly, one day at a time." For the rest of the morning, they worked in gentle partnership. Thomas repaired a loose board on the fence, while Lena swept the porch and dusted the front room. She moved carefully, not wanting to disturb anything, but Thomas noticed how naturally she blended into the place. Even her small touches, the open windows, letting in fresh sunlight, the neatly folded blankets. Around midday, Thomas returned from the barn to find Lena preparing a simple meal. She stood at the counter, chopping vegetables, her brow slightly furrowed in concentration. When she noticed him, she straightened nervously. "I thought I could try to help," she said softly. "I'm not sure what you like yet." Thomas smiled, touched. "I appreciate it. Anything is fine. Truly." They ate together at the small kitchen table. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was calm, natural. Lena found herself relaxing enough to ask small questions: how long he had lived on the ranch, how many cattle he owned, how far the nearest town was. Thomas answered her with gentle patience, happy to see her warming to the place. After lunch, they walked outside again. The wind carried a soft, warm smell of earth and summer grass. Thomas pointed toward a distant hill. "If you'd like, we can sit there later. The view is beautiful in the evening." Lena nodded shyly. "I'd like that." Throughout the afternoon, she familiarized herself with the house, folding linens, organizing her few belongings, and adding tiny touches that made the place feel a bit more like hers. She opened the windows in her room, letting the fresh air sweep through. She placed her small hand mirror and brush on the dresser. She even arranged the wildflowers in the vase so they looked a little fuller. As she worked, she thought of the night at the station, the cold, the fear, the loneliness. It felt like a distant memory now. Not forgotten, but softened. Because now, she could see how hard Thomas had tried, and she could see how sincerely he wanted her to feel safe. As the day stretched toward evening, Thomas knocked softly on her door. "Are you ready?" he asked. She stepped out, smoothing her dress. "Ready." They walked up the hill behind the house. The climb was gentle, and the view at the top was breathtaking. The land below spread wide and golden. The sky glowed with shades of orange, pink, and purple. The air was cool and peaceful. Lena sat on a smooth rock, and Thomas sat a short distance beside her, not too close, not too far, respecting her space. They watched the sunset in comfortable silence. After a few minutes, Thomas spoke quietly. "I've been alone a long time. I didn't realize how cold a home can feel until yesterday, when I rode to find you. I kept thinking, if I lost you before even meeting you, my house would stay empty forever." "Ender." Lena turned her head slightly, surprised by the honesty in his voice. "I'm glad you didn't give up on waiting," he continued. "I'm glad you stayed." She took a gentle breath. "I almost left," she admitted softly. "But something told me to wait a little longer. I don't know why. I just felt I should." Thomas looked at her, his eyes warm. "I'm grateful you listened to that feeling." The sky darkened slowly. Stars beginning to appear. A soft breeze brushed their faces. Lena folded her hands in her lap. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid you didn't want me. Afraid I made a mistake coming here." "I understand," Thomas replied softly. "But I want you to know something. I didn't choose you out of desperation. I chose you because your letters felt honest. Because you sounded strong and hopeful. Because I believed we could build a life together with respect and kindness." Lena's eyes softened. No one had ever spoken to her with such gentle sincerity before. Thomas continued, "I'm not asking you to feel anything today. Just allow yourself to belong here. At your pace. In your way." Something inside her shifted, something quiet and warm. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she wasn't a burden. Not an outsider, but someone who could matter. They walked back to the house under the soft glow of the rising moon. Thomas opened the door for her, and she stepped inside, feeling a sense of peace that she hadn't felt in years. That night, as she settled into her bed, Lena looked around her room again, the quilt, the flowers, the gentle light of the lantern, and realized she no longer felt like a visitor. She felt like she was slowly becoming part of the home. And downstairs, as Thomas set away his boots and prepared to rest, he whispered to himself, "This house doesn't feel empty anymore." They were strangers the day before. Today, they were two people beginning something hopeful. They didn't know what the future held, but they knew they would walk into it together, one gentle, steady day at a time. The abandoned bride who once sat alone on a crate now had a warm room, a caring companion, and a place where she finally felt she belonged.